Act 2. Season's greetings to our friends and family. Well, our reader for this next story is Julia Sweeney, who completely rocks. Julia is a writer and actress. She was a cast member on Saturday Night Live for 4 years. Her comic memoir, sad and comic memoir of life with cancer, God Said Ha, ran on Broadway this year, and a film of that one-woman show is going to be released next year in theaters. Please welcome her.
Season's greetings to our friends and family. Many of you, our friends and family, are probably taken aback by this, our annual holiday newsletter. You've read of our recent tragedy in the newspapers and were no doubt thinking that with all of their sudden legal woes and hassles, the Dunbar clan might be just sticking their heads in the sand and avoiding this upcoming holiday season altogether. Well, think again. Our tree is standing tall in the living room, the stockings are hung, and we are eagerly awaiting the arrival of a certain portly gentleman who goes by the name of Saint Nick. Our trusty PC printed out our wish list weeks ago, and now we're cranking it up again to wish you and yours the merriest of Christmas seasons from the entire Dunbar family. Clifford, Jocelyn, Kevin, Jacki, Kyle, and Khe Sahn. Some of you are probably reading this and scratching your heads over the name Khe Sahn. That certainly doesn't fit with the rest of the family names. You're saying to yourself, what? Did those crazy Dunbars get themselves a Siamese cat? Well, you're close. To those of you who live in a cave and haven't heard the news, allow us to introduce Khe Sahn Dunbar, who, at the age of 22, happens to be the newest member of our family. Surprise? Join the club. It appears that Clifford, husband of yours truly and father to our 3 natural children, accidentally planted the seeds for Khe Sahn 22 years ago during his stint in, where else, Vietnam. Clifford Dunbar, 22 years ago, a young man in a war-torn country, made a mistake. A terrible, heinous mistake. A stupid, thoughtless, permanent mistake with dreadful, haunting consequences. But who are you, who are any of us to judge him for it? Especially now with Christmas at our heels, who are we to judge? Khe Sahn arrived at our door on, as fate would have it, Halloween. I recall mistaking her for a trick-or-treater. She wore, I remember, a skirt the size of a beer cozy, a short furry jacket, and on her face enough rouge, eyeshadow, and lipstick to paint our entire house inside and out. She's a very small person, and I mistook her for a child masquerading as a prostitute. I handed her a fistful of chocolate nougats, hoping that, like the other children, she would quickly move on to the next house. But Khe Sahn was no trick-or-treater. It is frightening that after all this time, a full-grown bastard, and I use that word technically, can cross the seas and make herself comfortable in my home, all with the blessing of our government. 22 years ago, Uncle Sam couldn't stand the Vietnamese, and now he's dressing them like prostitutes and moving them into our houses. Out of nowhere, this landmine knocks upon our door, and we are expected to recognize her as our child. But Khe Sahn hasn't got the ambition God gave a sparrow. She arrived in this house 6 weeks ago, speaking only the words daddy, shiny, and $5 now. Quite a vocabulary. While an industrious person might buckle down and seriously study the language of her newly adopted country, Khe Sahn appeared to be in no hurry whatsoever. When asked a simple question, such as, why don't you go back to where you came from, she would touch my hand and launch into a spasm of Vietnamese drivel, as if I were an outsider, as if I were expected to learn her language. Clifford suggested that we hire an English tutor, but I am not in the habit of throwing my money away. And that, my friends, is what it would have amounted to. Why not hire an expensive private tutor to teach the squirrels to speak in French? It would be no more ridiculous than teaching Khe Sahn English. A person has to want to learn. I know that. Apparently, back in Ho Chi Minh City, Her Majesty was treated like a queen and sees no reason to change her ways. Her Highness rises around noon, wolfs down a fish or two, all she eats is fish and chicken breasts, and settles herself before the makeup mirror waiting for her father to return home from work. At the sound of his car in the driveway, she perks up and races to the door like a spaniel, panting and wagging her tail to beat the band. Suddenly, she's eager to please and attempt conversation. Well, I don't know how they behave in Vietnam, but in the United States, it is not customary for a half-dressed daughter to offer her father a $5 massage. After having spent an exhausting day attempting to communicate a list of simple chores, I would stand in amazement at Khe Sahn's sudden grasp of English when faced with my husband. Daddy happy, $5 shiny now, okay? You big feet friendly with ABC Khe Sahn, you big bird daddy Grover? Apparently, she'd picked up a few words while watching Sesame Street. It was a taxing experience for us all, especially our daughter Jaccelyn, whose nerves have been, well, permanently jangled by drugs. You may have heard something about this and no doubt understand that it wasn't our fault. We had, of course, warned Jaccelyn against marrying Timothy Speaks. We warned, we threatened, cautioned, advised, what have you, but it did no good as a young girl with all the evidence before her only sees what she wants to see. The marriage was bad enough, but the news of her pregnancy struck her father and me with the force of a hurricane. Timothy Speaks, the father of our grandchild, how could it be? Timothy Speaks, who has so many pierced holes in his ears you could have torn the lobe right off, effortlessly ripped it loose the same way you might separate a stamp from a sheet. We, of course, saw it coming. Faced with the concrete responsibility of fatherhood, Timothy Speaks abandoned his sick wife and child. Suddenly, gone. Poof! Surprised? Well, we saw it coming. We have all read the studies and understand that a drug-addicted baby faces a difficult, uphill battle in terms of living a normal life. This child, having been given the legal name Satan Speaks, would, we felt, have a harder time than most. We were lucky enough to get Jacki into a fine treatment center on the condition that the child remain here with us until which time, if ever, she was able to assume responsibility for him. The child arrived at our home on November 10th, and shortly thereafter, following her initial withdrawal, Jacki granted us permission to address it as Dawn. Dawn, a nice, simple name. While I could not describe him as being a normal baby, taking care of young Dawn gave me a great deal of pleasure. Terribly insistent, prone to hideous rashes, a 24-hour round-the-clock screamer, he was our grandchild and we loved him. Knowing that he would physically grow into adulthood while maintaining the attention span of a common housefly did not in the least bit diminish our feelings for him. Clifford would sometimes joke that Dawn was a crack baby because he woke us at the crack of dawn. I would then take the opportunity to mention that Khe Sahn was something of a crack baby herself, wandering around our house at all hours of the day and night wearing nothing but a pair of hot pants and a glorified sports bra. Clifford suggested that I buy her a few decent dresses, so I made her several outfits, sewed them with my own hands, 2 floor-length dresses, beautiful burlap dresses, but she did wear them.